far as I'm concerned, in this world, there's only two kinds of people. Those of us who appreciate the bright, cheerful graphics, innovative game design, ambitious, timeless stories, and iconic, lovable characters gifted to us by Nintendo. And those of us who actually have good taste in games, know that Nintendo is for babies, and if you've ever played a real game in your life, you've played it on the Sega Genesis. While the console wars of the 90s may have technologically and financially ended, that doesn't mean that people still can't have a side, that their arguments are invalid, or that there isn't a correct side. And although I've decided to take a neutral stance in order to preserve my journalistic integrity, if you look closely enough, the more eagle-eyed among you might just be able to see which side my slight lean is on. Regardless of both the higher quantity and quality of games on the Genesis though, it's practically common knowledge nowadays that the war was won less with the Mega Drive's creative freedom and lack of censorship, but more with sheer edge. Because this was the 90s, in the midst of which movies were darker, comics were grittier, music was edgier, and games were no different and in just as high a demand. It seemed like every company under the sun was selling games based entirely around how much your Christian mum would violently disapprove, and nowhere was this clearer than in the ads. Because it's here that the aftermath was perfectly preserved and immortalised for kids like me who can't afford new comic books to see and really wish they could. Because it was also here, inside a particularly fucking awful issue of The Punisher, one where he went down under and rode a camel, that I first saw it. Absolutely fucking nothing. Unlike its marketing, and to my surprise however, Light Crusader follows the Light Crusader, a Light Crusader who after a nondescript journey is invited to holiday in a town called Green Row. What journey I don't know, but apparently it involved getting horrendously burned. You quickly realise however that Green Row feels slightly odd, due mainly to the fact that people are being routinely dragged from their homes and killed, which is odd because that never normally happened, all of which is told to you by the king when he tasks you with solving the small odd issue of everyone dying slowly, so it's not really a holiday at all then really. What the game is though, other than a fucking disappointment, is an isometric action RPG, which is the first thing to instantly hit you, the second being the fact that it's too late to cancel the fucking video. This is made very clear through the game's main gimmick, which involves awkwardly pushing shit around. Also, yes, you can push the king down the stairs, although not nearly as violently as that time I pushed my nan. With no hints from the game, I decided to start my search in the cemetery, because if something shady has gone down, it definitely went down on Tower 7, but since there's nowhere else, cemetery it is. Below which, the real crusade begins. This time not to retake the Holy Land and kill Muslims, but instead to dungeon crawl, rescue people, solve puzzles, and take down the Wizard's Guild. Because plot twist, it's the ones who wear dark robes, practice black magic, and kill people who are excitingly revealed to be the ones killing people. Also, I don't know how that was a plot twist either. The game makes out like, haha, little did you know, despite the fact that I have never seen this man before in my life outside of the intro wherein he directly threatens the main programmer. What I have seen before though is the concept of a Metroidvania, and although Castlevania is actually good, having the idea to rip off Metroid Second doesn't make it any more original. Good idea, by the way. As well as being the first, the game also fits in perfectly today amongst all the other pretentious pixel art indie Metroidvanias because it literally is one, and it might as well have come out today if it wasn't for this crisp, high-quality audio. Answer the riddle. Whoa, I could have sworn that was an actual person. Like all Metroidvania games, from this point onwards, the entire game takes place in this single dungeon. What's looking to be a huge single dungeon, but they could have at least changed the fucking floor texture once. Okay, change it back. You jump between both the castle you started in and the teleport points you unlock throughout the many floors below the cemetery. Although instead of unlocking them using cool powers and abilities found along the way, it's done using keys found in places and from people, which is just as fun as it sounds and ends up making the entire game overall feel like a collectathon instead of a journey. In that by the end of it, all you have to show for it is an inventory full of fucking keys. The exception to this, however, are the doors that are opened by solving puzzles that either involve pushing blocks, so basically just huge keys, or finding scrolls that contain a pattern or solution to something otherwise impossibly cryptic, so basically just keys. And I know that I'm pretending here that there aren't people out there that just love this kind of shit, they're just the same kind of people who also enjoy slamming their skulls against brick walls. All of the room puzzles are near enough exactly the same though, and simple enough that I'm not ever having to stop and really waste too much time thinking about one, apart from this time and maybe like 6 or 7 other times. The actual difficulty, however, comes from these annoying fucks and disgusting balls of slime I like to call the Sonic fanbase, because combat in this game is really fun and challenging in the same way as teeth removal, and that's probably not the tone they were going for. Regardless of what weapon and armor you have, it quickly devolves into this because you realise that diving through the air does more damage and makes you invincible when you're off the ground. The only downside being it takes a fraction of a second longer, which is very noticeable when it's the only thing you're doing because the seconds really start to pile up, meaning that you're eventually smashing the button to phone ahead hoping to book an attack in advance despite the already full schedule of pre-booked attacks. I have not had this much fun since school. And unless you particularly want to die, there's no reason to use the standard attack unless you're really bored, which accounted for pretty much every single time I died, which was a lot by the way. Although there is a health management system, being able to increase the maximum and restore it to full by eating cheese. It's destroyed by a feature that allows you to automatically feed food into your mouth constantly, fucking Sylvia Pankhurst style whenever your health is low. That's one for you nerds out there. Meaning that the bar might as well not even be there at all, because the amount of food you have in your inventory is a much better indicator of health, more so than whatever this thing decides to do. And I mean, sure, a more experienced, skilled and better person looking for a fair challenge would just turn the automatic eating off and consume cheese manually, but nah. Killing enemies though can reward the player with either a numbness to killing, more food or magic, which is where the game really kicks off. Yeah, with the magic and not the fucking tank. By the way, there's a tank. The magic is comprised mainly of elements which on their own are the generic fire, ice, earth attacks, but when combined in every single combination you can think of, you get pretty much every single attack you can think of. For example, earth and wind make thunder, which is cool, and I'm no geographist, but I'm pretty sure that's not how that works. And this is where the fun begins, and ends horribly like the actual Crusades. Because the entire game is spent grinding magic to see what all the different combinations do, like earth and water making mud, right? Nope, it makes a fairy, obviously. Back in a sec, just gonna go kill myself. And outside of this, there's pretty much nothing to see anywhere else, apart from that gradient, by the way, all the time. They looked at that and went, yeah, that's a good thing to be there forever. Because the game manages to make up for the one interesting part by channeling boredom through every other aspect, like the soundtrack, which, fair enough, is alright, it's just overused to the point of also channeling a spontaneous trip to a really nice high bridge. But I mean, it's a 16-bit game from the 90s anyway, so unless it's one of those already established timeless classics, it's kind of assumed that you'd be slamming on some of your own jams in the background anyway. Oh, I fucking love this one. In fact, I'd encourage it, because what with this game being an RPG from the era of horrible bit-crushed voice acting, the game opts for text. And even then, impressively, there isn't even that much, managing to portray the story really well through like 4 dialogue boxes. Also, I lied, there's a lot of voice acting. Thank you. Which I'm not really a fan of, but it's as good as it can be, you know, despite being generally terrible. Maintaining that same level of quality though, this is a breaking update on the story so far, it's still shit. By now I've realised that this game has very little to do with Crusaders or even the Crusades, which I didn't initially care about or even want, but the more I think about it, it's the only thing I've ever actually really wanted, really. Instead, the evil wizard, I don't care, summons the ancient evil demon, I also don't care, and the game comes to a climactic end with Daniel, by the way that's actually his name, rescuing the virgin sacrifices and killing. And although the game never really explained how the wizard managed to capture the presumably virgin sacrifices in the first place, I have an idea. And so wraps up that little chapter, and also a chapter in my life, the one where I waited 14 years to play this. But if I've taken anything away from it other than a new insane appreciation for games that aren't this, it's a new obsession and need for another nice big crusade. In a video game. And real life. Not really though. Yes, really.